If Vietnamese can swap out their old writing system and use a Romanized system to be able to be used right across the country, why can't Thailand? Could Thailand once and for all finally ditch this convoluted script that has so many letters for the same sound and doesn't have any spaces and use something more sensible like a Romanized script just like Vietnam uses? As I mentioned in my last clip, this is a question that you see come up over and over again, and I actually saw it this morning come up in Quora yet again, asking about Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai. They're always asking, why can't these countries use a civilized system like an alphabet? And so in my Minecraft program, we thought, well, let's try and use the principles of Vietnamese and design a script that could be used for Thai. And that's what I'm bringing to you here now on YouTube. So the question, could you develop a script based on the same principles as Vietnamese for Thai? After all, so many of the sounds and tones are kind of the same, aren't they? Well, maybe you could, but should you? I mentioned that vowels are the ones that are usually most difficult, so I covered them first. And we actually came up with what I think is a pretty robust system using the principles. They kind of look like Vietnamese letter shapes for the Thai sound system or the Thai vowel system. So today we're going to be looking at consonants and tones. Now you can't really separate these from each other because tones and consonants are linked. What you will realize by the end of this clip, I hope, is that actually tones are not just pitch. You cannot think of tones through Western ears. You need to understand what tones actually are and how they interact with consonants if we're going to come up with some kind of Romanization script that really works for Thai. By the end of this clip, I want you to help me make this decision. If you were to come up with a Romanization script for Thai, would you choose a robust system that will last into the future and could even be used for multiple Thai dialects across Thailand and beyond? Or would you do what has happened in Vietnam and take a snapshot of a cloud back in, say, the 1500s and then have to do all of this mental gymnastics depending on what variety of modern Vietnamese it is that you're speaking? What am I talking about? Well, let's have a look. This is a clip that we use in session 10 of Minecraft when we look at different dialects and how to jump between different dialects. And here, Vietnamese is the base language. And I'm going to show you the difference between Northern, Central, and Southern Vietnamese. Now, the catch is, for most words, these words are spelt the same. The spelling is identical. The diacritics for the tones in the writing are identical. So as you listen, think of what impact this would have on, say, the Thai language if you were developing a script for the Thai language, a language which, like Vietnamese, has many varieties.
Hỏi. Hỏi.
Hỏi. Hỏi. Hỏi. Hỏi.
Okay, so have a look at that. This is for, in Vietnamese, they use in the script, it's like a top part of a question mark. And this is called the hỏi tone. But if you listen to the way that the Northern Vietnamese pronounces this is hỏi. But this gets to the crucial thing about tones. Tones are not only pitch. As you're listening to this, I want you to listen to also what's happening in the throat. Is it soft? Is it cutting off? Is it going creaky? And then also listen to the length of the syllable. In some dialects, it's short. In some, it's long. And as you listen to different tones, you'll hear that different tones will have different lengths and different characteristics. The pitch of the tone is just one element of the tone. But actually, there are a lot of other factors that go to making up what a tone is. Have a listen.
Can đảm. Can đảm.
Can đảm. Can đảm. Can đảm.
Okay, so did you hear that? The first one was can đảm. Can đảm. And it's like this and dam. And it just goes down and stops. And then this next one was can. So you've gone from can to can. But look at this. The script is writing it all as an A. So that A can represent A or A. We talked about that in the last clip, that you get these variations for the same letter. How do you cater for that? And then when we see the tone, we have gan, dam, dam. It just goes down and stops. But these other ones, dam, dam, dam. Some are short, some are long. Some go in for the dip and come up. Others just go down and stop. Have a listen again.
Can đảm, can đảm, can đảm.
Cẩn thận. Cẩn thận.
Okay, so did you hear that? Cẩn thận, cẩn thận, cẩn. It starts cẩn, probably at about 2.5, 3. Cẩn. Tut is about here. So cẩn thận. Have a listen again. And that is because the nature of this tone with a dot on it. That's called the nặng tone or nặng tone, depending on where you are, which, by the way, is the same root as the word nặng in Thai for heavy. It's the heavy tone. But this tone is not just pitch. It's actually throat actions. And so in the north, you'll hear it actually cut off the voice, where in other dialects, well, you can hear for yourself.
Cẩn thận.
Cẩn thận, cẩn thận.
Now, did you see that? Cẩn thận. The t, where it was cut off here and the tongue hit here. But in the next sample for Central Vietnamese, it was tongue. It was almost like an NG at the back, and it didn't cut it off. Now have a listen to the Southern pronunciation from Ho Chi Minh.
Cẩn thận, cẩn thận.
It's almost like an NG at the end. Cẩn thận. And this tone here, cẩn thận, sound very, very similar. If you compare it to the first one, it's like cẩn thận, and it's cut off, but there's cẩn thận. It's kind of the same, but a little different. Now here, look at the difference between the consonants D, this is a normal D, not a D with a stroke, and an R in Vietnamese.
Con dao. Con dao.
Okay, I'll just mention con. This is an O, so it's like this o ang that I mentioned in the last clip. Con. And you notice if you look at a pitch graph, con. It's not a normal voice like this. This would be my normal voice. Con. It's elevated. So almost like this maglev train, elevated above the natural position of the voice. Con. And then you can see this D. It's not a D, by the way. It's not a D. In the north, this is pronounced like a Z. So zao, con zao. And listen at the end of zao. When she says it, I'll play her back again. Con, then zao. Again, her tone falls off at the end just because of the position of that zao. You don't have to pronounce the tones exactly at this pitch that you take a snapshot. Tones are just throat positions and they're natural movements between the throat. And so, yeah, sometimes it's going to fade off at the end if that's the last part of it. Sometimes, depending on what's before or after, the actual pitch contours are going to vary because it's more about the throat. The pitch is just a byproduct. Have a listen to the north again, and then I'll let you compare it to the central and southern varieties.
Con dao.
Con dao.
Con dao.
Con dao.
Con dao,
Con
con
yao.
dao.
Gong yao. Okay, so did you hear that? Gong. So this N at the end is swallowed up in the back. So you've got gone in the north. Gong, 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 gong. So the pitch is changing, the final is changing, and there's just an overall different feel. There's a different color to Central Vietnamese, but they still spell it the same. Now have a listen to this. This is Ho Chi Minh.
Con dao, con dao.
Okay, so that turns into gong yeo, gong yeo. Have a listen again.
Con dao, con dao.
So it's gong yeo. So you've gone from zao, yao, yao. They're all changing. Even the A is changing in that. And so the question is, how do you develop a script then that's going to be able to be used right across the country and be able to be robust enough for the language if we're doing it for Thai, that's going to take these things into consideration? Here's another example.
Thân thiện. thân thiện,
thân thiện, thân thiện. Again, you have this dot under it, so it's actually having an effect on the throat for Northern Vietnamese. Okay, so the tone is not just pitch, it's entire throat actions across time, and it's quite short. If you compare it to the first word, tons resounding out. In Thai, we would call that alive. But this tone in Vietnamese actually kills it.
Thân thiện, thân thiện.
Okay, listen to that. You can even see it in her mouth. Tongue, N at the end turns into NG. Tongue, teen. And then this T-I-E, the I-E, instead of T-I-E, it turns into E. So, tongue, teen. And it doesn't kill it, teen. It just sort of dies out. And this is amazing with Vietnamese because it's almost through northern to central to southern. We can see these shifts that have happened across hundreds of years with languages like Thai. So if you actually looked at the Thai in southern China all the way down to Thailand Thai, maybe you'd see these shifts. But in Vietnam, we see it across the one language in modern Vietnamese, just depending on where you are in Vietnam. We can see all of these shifts, yet they use the same orthography.
Thân thiện, thân thiện.
Okay, did you see that? Thân thiện, thân thiện. It's different again from central, from northern. It carries on, it doesn't cut it off. It's in a different register of the voice. So if we look at the tones of Vietnamese, we can see northern, southern, and central dialect. And so for the snapshot of Vietnamese that was done by Alexander de Rode in the 1500s, he used, now there is some debate about this. He said that he used Central Vietnamese, which at that time was the prestige variety. But later on, there are people that say, well, actually, this is based on Tonkin Vietnamese. The Tonkin region back then was from all the way from basically southern Yunnan, Guangxi provinces in southern China, down through part of Laos and through northern Vietnam. They were all the Tonkin varieties of Vietnamese. And so that's what some people say that Rhodes's dictionary and the script, a script that was developed for Portuguese Jesuit priests who spoke Latin. Of course, you had French, and then they had the alphabet that they were used to. That's why some of these letters are a bit quirky, because it was designed to be able to be read by these Portuguese Jesuit priests. Now, the tones that were snapped in that snapshot, and again, it's just like taking a snapshot of a cloud and saying this is a cloud, and using that as a standard for what clouds are all the way into the future for hundreds of years. It's just insane because things change. But the tones that were in that snapshot, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if in northern, and you can see this would be that elevated, so ngang, and that's got no tone marker. The next tone marker in Vietnamese is huyen, huyen, depending on where you are. Now, this is a bit deceptive because you just see this downstroke here, but actually it's in different registers of the voice depending on where you are in Vietnam. And depending on what word comes before it or after it, that could change as well. The next one is this tone here. So if you're in northern Vietnamese, it would be sag, sag, and that's from about maybe a 2.5 to 4 if this was 1 was the lowest point and 5 were the highest. And so for northern and southern, but central actually has a glottal stop at the beginning. And you'll find not only that, in southern dialects, and I think in central, this s becomes a sh. So it becomes shak and shak, shak, shak. And so, again, the pitches change, the nature of the tone change, whether it has a glottal stop or not changes. This is the one that we saw first just now. This is the hoi, and you can see even this is different. The tones will change. The actual pitch contours will change even within a given dialect. So you have hoi, and you see it cut off there. Here you have in the south, hoi, and here you have in central, hoi. But if you go back and listen to what we did just a moment ago, it changes again for each person depending on who's saying it. The next one, we call this in the northern the nga, and it has this break in it. Nga, nga. Only in the north, though, is the break there. In the southern dialect, it's nga, and so you can see the hoi and the nga in southern dialect are the same. Yet in writing, they will have to think, oh, which one's which? I'm going to put the hoi for this and the nga for that, but I imagine that some people will get them mixed up from the south because they pronounce them identically. It's not that different from Thai having many different letters to represent the same sound. And then in central, this glottal stop has jumped to the end. So from nga, so we have nga, 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 and it's cut off. And then finally that one with the dot, which I mentioned, really kills it. So here you have nak, 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 you see it cut off here. In the south, actually we heard just now, even though they say it's cut off here, she didn't cut it off. It was sort of short, but not really cut off. So here it's nang, and it's a little higher. And then this one, nang, it just rings out. So the tones within Vietnamese, even though they have these diacritics for writing them, they're actually not consistent. And native Vietnamese speakers are using this system from hundreds of years ago that took a snapshot of one variety of Vietnamese. Well, actually, Rhodes said it was a compilation of different ones. But anyway, it's taken this snapshot that is just not viable in modern Vietnamese. And so even though they use these to write, each native speaker will interpret this orthography in their own way to suit the way that they speak it. So ultimately, you end up with almost a diglossia where you've got a written form of the language, but the language that they really speak. This is the problem when developing a romanization system for a language like Thai or Vietnamese or Chinese. Foreigners go in with good intentions because they want to make evil people holy with their religion. So they develop these wonderful romanization scripts so that they can proselytize and convert the population so they can all go to heaven and not go to their pagan hell. And so they bring them the gift of romanization. Now, yes, that was said a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's not far off the truth. And so what happens is they go in with their Western understanding and their Western ears and try and develop a system based on that understanding that actually is like trying to fit a triangle peg into a round hole. So this clip is to just get your mind in place so you know what the issues are when developing the script. What you see here now is what's called the Cheyun rhyme table that was used way back from Middle Chinese and through the Song dynasty. And this was actually based on that Sanskrit map of the human mouth. What you realize when you're learning tonal languages, and I'm not just talking about Mandarin Chinese. When people say Chinese these days, they're thinking of Mandarin Chinese, but actually Mandarin is just, again, this little snapshot. It's just one dialect/language out of this huge family of languages, but they all run on the same engine. And even Vietnamese, Thai, they all run on this same engine. So what we have here is the back of the throat is this column. These are like the ch sounds. These are like hard palate sounds on the teeth. This is the front of the teeth, and you can see that's the character for tooth. This is the blade of the tongue, and these are the lips. And then this one here is with the throat closed. So this is like ga, da, these kinds of sounds here. The throat is closed at the beginning. And then what you have is puffing air, so ta. So this would be ta as opposed to ta. And so this block here would be ta because the throat's closed as opposed to ta. And then this one here. And so these four columns break it down to stopped throat, puffing of air. Sometimes you'll have voiced and then stopped throat at the end. And so I'll just demonstrate that. So the stopped throat version, say for a K, would be ga. The puffy version would be ka. The voiced version would be ga. The nasal version would be nga. And then the stopped throat version, well, the stopped throat only happens at the end of a syllable. So if I take nga at the end, so say for the word song, and I stop my throat on it, what does it become? Song, sok. So this ok, ik is the stopped back of the throat. And so that would go in this column here. And so these are the rhyme tables that were used for all Chinese dialects. You could actually look at this, and a Chinese speaker, knowing just a handful of characters, could actually have a look at the beginning consonant, the final rhyme of it, and even what the tone is. And this was their transliteration system for hundreds of years. Now, for those who have learnt Thai and who have learnt any Indic languages, this would sound very familiar, because it was based on this very same system from Sanskrit. So Sanskrit, you had the back of the throat, ga, ka, ga, ga, nga. You had the palate, ja, cha, nya. You had the cerebral, da, 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 ta, da, ta, na. You had the teeth, da, ta, da, ta, na. You had the lips, ba, pa, ba, pa, ma. Then you had stop throat, so ga, ja, da. My throat stopped for here. We have the aspirated one, so ka, like I just mentioned from Chinese, we have the voice, ga. In the Indic languages, we also had aspirated voice, so that would be ga. And then we have nasal, nga. And so this system, you see then in Thai, becomes this. Now in Thai, originally, they actually had ko kwai was go gwai. It was a G. But then that lost its voicing, and so it became a ka. And so all of these letters were pronounced as ka. So this is ga, ka, nga. The only reason, by the way, in Thai they have this row of letters is so that they can maintain the spelling from Sanskrit words. In traditional Thai words, this column is not here. So if we have a look at this Cheyun system, this system here is actually the Sanskrit system applied to Chinese, and that was their transliteration system. And so what I have here is the Vietnamese system mapped over Thai. Now this is again from session 10 of Minecraft. If you really want to learn this and get your sounds on point for Vietnamese, for Thai, for Chinese, or for actually any language, even European languages, well, come to Minecraft at jacademy.com. But anyway, what I've done here is map Vietnamese sounds over this abugida, so you can actually start to see how Vietnamese would look like, and we can start to get a picture if we were to map then the Vietnamese style writing to Thai, which could be done, what it's going to start to look like. But even in Vietnamese, Vietnamese is not a perfect system. You can see C, K, and Q are all used to represent the ga sound depending on what comes after it. And again, this was probably because of the Jesuit priests. You have KH representing ha. You have G and GH both representing g. You have CH and TR representing t or z, depending where you are in Vietnamese. And then you have a look down here. You have D, GI, and R, if in Northern Vietnamese, all representing z. Now you can see in light blue here, that's Northern. But then if we have a look at Southern, look at this green letter here, we see the letter D here representing y. So this D here in Northern is z. The D in Southern is y. So for those that are saying, look, Vietnam came up with this script that can be used to write it, romanize it, and it works across the whole country, well, they are using it, but it's actually quite deceptive. And perhaps this is the reason why many foreigners, maybe they think at first, this is going to be a piece of cake because I know the Roman alphabet, if there is such a thing, or the Latin alphabet. But actually, as they get into it and think, this is crazy, these don't sound like what I thought they sounded like. And many people just give up, or even worse, they just plow through and start pronouncing what they see as Vietnamese words just through their own maybe English or other European languages sound systems and totally butcher the Vietnamese language. Now, the last point on tones I'll talk about in the next clip. Suffice to say that actually in any tonal language, from China down to Vietnam to Thailand, there were originally only 3 tones. There was normal voice, ma. There was what was originally a glottal stop. This glottal stop, so instead of ma, it would be ma. And so in Chinese, this glottal stop turned into what we know now as the shang, or in original shang, it was this rising tone. And then we had what used to be a final S. So for example, it used to be mas. You know how in Spanish, how we say mas español, that S turns into an H? Well, that happened as well. So mas turned into ma. And so this is what became the departing tone in Chinese, which in Thai, the departing tone in Chinese is what we use the tone marker mei ek for. And the original glottal stop, which became the shang tone or rising tone in Chinese, is what we use the mei to for in Thai. So mei to is what in Chinese would be this rising, and mei ek in Thai would be the departing tone. And then in Thai, we also have dead and alive. So ma versus mak and mak, because we have long, mak, and short, mak. So we have short and long dead, which corresponds to this final fourth column across Chinese languages. And of course, Vietnamese has all of these as well. When these missionaries put the Romanization system together, they didn't really base it on this system, which is actually super robust. This system can be used for any dialect of Chinese, even now, from the north to the south. You can apply these principles. You can't do that with the Vietnamese script. And as you saw in those samples that we used, it's up to the speaker to interpret then the script in their own way. The way that script is rendered is going to change from person to person, from place to place, and over time it's going to change as well. Using set in stone tone markers like that over a script is basically taking little Johnny at age 2, marking his height on a wall, and then 30 years later saying, oh, that's Johnny, that represents Johnny, but Johnny is actually turned into this 6'8" giant now, but you're still looking at that little line saying Johnny was this high against the wall when he was 2 years old. Languages change, tones change. What happens with the throat changes, not only over time, but even across villages, across geography. So, I want you to think between now and the next clip, if you were to devise a Romanization script for Thai, would you want a Romanization system that is just going to be a snapshot of a cloud, or drawing that line for Johnny at 2 years old, which could change in the next 5 years, 10 years, and will definitely change across geography even now, and basically having people to have to do mental gymnastics as to what sounds are what into the future, or depending on how they speak Thai? Or would you like to develop a robust Romanization system that can be used into the future no matter how the language changes, or no matter where it's spoken, what dialect of that language is used? Have a think about it. Let me know in the comment section below, because in the next clip, we're going to have to make a decision. Robust and accurate, or temporarily simple to use, but not really accurate and is almost guaranteed to decay over time. Think about it. Which one would you use? We'll wrap this up in the next clip. Scan the Discord server QR code down below. Come in and continue the discussion in Discord. Come and join Minecraft at jacademy.com. I'm Stuart J. Raj. I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you.